"Sir, can you fix my toy? It was our last gift from Dad," a girl told the millionaire at the cafe. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly, almost apologetically, as if it knew it was about to witness something that would change a life forever. Rain traced slow, trembling lines down the glass windows, blurring the city outside, when a small girl with trembling hands lifted a broken toy toward a man who had everything money could buy, but nothing he truly needed. In that fragile moment, between a millionaire's polished silence and a child's quiet hope, destiny leaned in and listened. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a second right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and small moments that can change entire lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. The man was named Jonathan Miller, a well-known technology investor in New York City, though very few people would have recognized him sitting alone at a corner table of a modest cafe near Central Park. His tailored suit was flawless, his watch worth more than most people's cars, yet his eyes carried a weight that no luxury could hide. Jonathan had learned long ago how to close deals, predict markets, and build companies from nothing. What he had never learned was how to sit with grief without letting it harden him. His wife had died 6 years earlier, leaving behind a quiet apartment and a silence so loud it followed him everywhere. Since then, he lived on autopilot, waking up, making millions, and returning each night to emptiness. That morning, he had come to the cafe not for coffee, but for escape. The rain gave him an excuse to pause, to sit somewhere warm while the city rushed on without him. He stared into his untouched cup, replaying old memories he usually kept locked away. Then he noticed movement beside his table, small and hesitant, like a question waiting to be asked. The girl could not have been more than 5 or 6. Her jacket was worn thin at the elbows, her shoes slightly too big, and her blonde hair tied into uneven pigtails. She clutched a stuffed bunny whose ear hung loose, the stitching torn, the fabric faded from years of love. Her eyes were wide, not with entitlement or curiosity, but with the careful courage of a child who had learned disappointment too early. She stood there quietly, looking at Jonathan as if he were the last safe place in a very big world. The cafe buzzed with low conversations and the clatter of cups, but around them, everything seemed to slow. Jonathan noticed her small fingers squeezing the toy, as if afraid it might fall apart completely. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and careful, like she was afraid of breaking something else. She explained that the toy was broken, that it had been her last gift from her dad, and she wondered if he could fix it. There was no begging in her tone, no expectation, just hope, fragile and brave. Jonathan froze, not because he didn't know how to respond, but because something inside him cracked open without warning. The word "dad" echoed in his chest like a forgotten melody. He thought of his own childhood, of a father who worked long hours but always fixed his toys at the kitchen table late at night. He remembered how safe the world felt back then, how problems seemed smaller when someone knelt down to your level and tried. The girl's name was Emily Parker. Her father, Daniel Parker, had been a construction worker who died suddenly from a heart condition the previous winter. Since then, Emily and her mother, Grace, had been surviving on part-time work and quiet sacrifices. The bunny had been given to Emily on her last birthday with her dad, just weeks before he passed. It was more than a toy. It was a memory she could hold. Jonathan didn't know any of this yet, but he felt it. He gently took the bunny, examining the torn seam, with a seriousness usually reserved for million-dollar contracts. He asked for a napkin, borrowed a small sewing kit from the barista, and right there in the cafe, with rain tapping the windows and strangers sipping coffee, he began to sew. His hands, accustomed to keyboards and boardrooms, moved awkwardly at first, but slowly, carefully, he stitched the ear back into place. Emily watched with complete focus, her feet rocking slightly with each movement of the needle. When he finished, the bunny wasn't perfect, but it was whole. Something changed then. Jonathan felt it before he understood it. Fixing that toy did not just mend fabric. It stitched something closed inside him that had been bleeding quietly for years. Grace Parker had been watching from a nearby table, heart pounding. She had almost stopped Emily from approaching the stranger, but something in the man's posture felt safe. When Jonathan returned the toy and smiled gently at Emily, Grace felt tears sting her eyes. It had been months since anyone had looked at her daughter with that kind of care. They talked briefly, exchanging names, sharing small pieces of their lives. Jonathan learned about Daniel, about the struggles Grace faced, about Emily's fear of forgetting her father. Each word settled deep in him, heavier than any business loss he had ever endured. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan couldn't forget them. He found himself returning to the cafe at the same time every morning, hoping to see the little girl with the mended bunny. When he finally did, something felt different. He wasn't just a man passing time anymore. He was waiting. Slowly, without grand gestures or dramatic announcements, Jonathan became part of their lives. He helped Grace find better work through connections he had never used for anything personal. He attended Emily's school play, standing awkwardly among parents who didn't know his name or his net worth. He learned how to listen, how to show up, how to care without trying to. Control. There were setbacks. Jonathan struggled with vulnerability, with the fear of losing again. Grace struggled with trusting someone whose world seemed so far from her own. But Emily bridged the distance effortlessly, pulling them together with laughter, drawings, and endless questions. The more Jonathan gave, the more he realized how empty his life had been before. His success had built walls, not happiness. Emily's small hand in his, her unfiltered joy at simple things, rewired something fundamental inside him. One winter evening, nearly a year after that rainy cafe morning, Jonathan stood in his penthouse apartment, watching snow fall over the city. The space no longer felt silent. Emily's drawings were taped to the fridge. Grace's coat hung by the door. Laughter echoed where loneliness once lived. Jonathan understood then that wealth was not measured in accounts or assets, but in moments like these. In the courage of a child asking for help, in the kindness of choosing to care, in the quiet power of being present. As the story nears its end, take a moment. If this journey of kindness, loss, and unexpected healing has touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement truly matters. And before the ending, I have one special request for you. Please comment below with the word kindness if this story reminded you that even the smallest act can change a life forever. Jonathan never fixed another toy in that cafe, but he fixed something far more important that day. He found his way back to humanity, guided by a little girl, a broken bunny, and a question asked with pure hope. And in a world rushing past pain every day, that single moment proved that kindness, when given freely, always finds its way home. Snow continued to fall over New York, softening the sharp edges of the city, but life did not suddenly become perfect for Jonathan, Grace, and Emily. Healing, Jonathan learned, was not a straight road. It was a series of small choices made every day, often quietly, often without applause. And now that he had chosen to stay, to truly be present, the real work began. Jonathan started spending less time in boardrooms and more time in ordinary places. He learned the rhythm of school mornings, the chaos of mismatched socks and forgotten lunches. He learned that Emily hated broccoli but loved pancakes shaped like animals, and that she slept better when a nightlight stayed on. At night, when she would clutch the old stuffed bunny, still slightly crooked from his first clumsy stitching, Jonathan would feel a tightness in his chest, a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude for being trusted, fear of ever disappointing her. Grace noticed the changes too. Jonathan was no longer the distant, polished businessman she first met in the cafe. He listened now, really listened. He asked about her day, her worries, her exhaustion. Sometimes she caught him staring at Emily with an expression that made her look away, not because it frightened her, but because it carried a depth of emotion she knew could shatter someone if lost. There were moments of doubt. Jonathan questioned whether he deserved this second chance at family, whether he was stepping into a space that belonged to Daniel, a good man who should still be alive. On difficult nights, guilt pressed on him harder than loneliness ever had. but each time, Emily's small, steady presence anchored him. She never asked him to replace her father. She simply accepted him as someone who stayed. One evening, near the anniversary of Daniel's passing, Emily became unusually quiet. She carried her bunny from room to room, her fingers tracing the old stitches. Jonathan noticed, his heart tightening. That night, she placed the bunny carefully on the table and asked if they could visit her dad the next day. The cemetery was quiet, the air cold but clear. Emily stood between Grace and Jonathan, holding both their hands. She talked softly, telling her father about school, about learning to read better, about how Mr. Jonathan fixed her toy. Jonathan stood silently, tears threatening but unshed, understanding that love did not erase loss, it learned to stand beside it. After that day, something shifted. Grace allowed herself to breathe more freely, to imagine a future not defined only by survival. Jonathan, in turn, began reshaping his priorities. He stepped down from several executive roles, shocking his colleagues. Money, he realized, had always been replaceable. Time was not. Jonathan started a foundation quietly, without press releases or branding. It helped single parents with emergency expenses, medical bills, and childcare, things he now understood intimately. He insisted on anonymity, remembering that dignity mattered more than recognition. Months passed, then years. Emily grew taller, more confident, her laughter filling rooms effortlessly. She never let go of the bunny, though it gained new stitches over time, each one a reminder of how fragile things could be, and how they could still endure. One rainy afternoon, much like the first day they met, Jonathan found himself back at the same café. The bell chimed, the windows fogged, and for a moment, time folded in on itself. Emily sat across from him now, older, drawing quietly, her shoes no longer too big. Grace stirred her coffee, smiling softly. Jonathan looked around and understood the full circle of it all. He had walked into that cafe empty, carrying invisible wounds, and a child with a broken toy had unknowingly handed him a way back to life. Before this story ends, let me ask you something from the heart. If this journey of loss, kindness, and healing has moved you even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this live because of people like you. And one last special request. Please comment below with the word hope if this story reminded you that even broken beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. Jonathan never became Emily's replacement father in name, but he became something just as powerful, a constant, a presence. Proof that sometimes family is not found by blood, but by the courage to care when it would be easier to walk away. And somewhere in a quiet cafe, beneath the sound of rain and clinking cups, a simple act of kindness continued to echo, long after the stitches had healed.